into science. Like when I was in 7th grade, I got something that really embarrassed me. The science teacher, who was also the chairman for the science department, we had this assembly, right? She was talking about science. It was 57, 58 when they had the whole science thing going on in school.
Oh, sure.
So she says, I want to introduce you to a very special student. And she calls my name up in front of this 2,000 people in this auditorium.
Oh, no.
At the stage, and then she has me stand there in the middle of the stage, and she said, this person is an incredible science student, and he is going to go a long way in science, and blah, blah, blah. I was so embarrassed.
Well, at least she didn't say something that was really going to, I thought you were going to lead into, perhaps she was going to identify you as someone that thought you were from someplace other than here, which
no,
was a little tough to explain back in those days.
Well, in science, that was not even a given for anything. That was something to be laughed at by regular scientists. But what I found out was that was really where I was at. I was into science. I discovered relationship of science and this planet to science and space when I was roughly in 5th and 6th grade. And that was where I went off into, and that was where I really liked everything. I felt at home with it. That and math, loved mathematics, I loved science. I didn't do too well in English or in social. Basically, I was a geek, if you want to say anything about what I was. And so I didn't really relate too well to most people, and I was pretty much in one particular place, which was about facts and figures and things related to thereof. And so I was not the most socially aware student. I mean, in fact, I was probably one of the least in terms of the relationships, et cetera, because I really didn't have one. From the time I was in 5th grade to the time I graduated, I had only one date. That was to the only other person who didn't have a relationship during the whole time she was in high school, and we went to the prom together, and that was it.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And that was my only date in high school.
Well, it must have been difficult, but at least you had your sister. And I was going to ask you, did your sister pull away from this, or is she still very much involved in this?
She's involved in it, but she has to downplay it a lot because she's a cardiac nurse.
Okay, understood. Tell me something. I'm very curious. When you said that your room was kind of like a special effects, describe to our audience what you're talking about. What was going on for you as a child?
Well, when I was a child, they would be observing me. So you would have flashing blue lights going on and off, which, of course, you could see through the door. And I had all kinds of abilities. I could open and close doors. I could turn switches on and off. I could move things around.
So you're working with your almost like kinetics, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Telepathy?
Yeah. I could move just about anything around. I was very advanced because of all the training they gave me.
Could you show this to like your mother, or no? You kind of kept it to yourself?
They kind of felt it, and also they would see these big and blue flashes when I would leave. And my mother would always say, that's why she said, "Where are you from?" She'd open the door and it'd be gone.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Okay, so if there was something going on that even she could see, but she might have been a little bit fearful to admit something was quite different.
Well, they had this awe and fear going on.
Yeah, that was pretty prevalent, I would say, and still is today. I mean, let's face it, with all the information we're being bombarded with, it's pretty difficult to remain open-minded without being gullible. I mean,
right.
As you know, we're getting so much right now, and we'll get on to that a little bit later, but it is difficult. Tell me about the mothership. What's it like on a mothership?
Well, the mothership that I went to was about 300 miles across. It was a much older model than they have in most of the fleet. They mainly had brought it along because they wanted to have me come up and down. They wanted an environment that was perfect for me, and they felt that this model of mothership was perfect. And I haven't seen them all, but I'd have to say that was pretty well the case. To me, this was like ultimate Disneyland to me. I enjoyed it. Whenever you would walk in the ship, you would never feel like you were walking like on Earth. You'd always feel like you were floating in air or walking on water, because the ship is set up so that when you completely take a step, you don't feel the pressure of the floor on you. It's completely pressureless because
Go ahead.
The field rises up, and the walls are lit brightly, but with a light that's perfect for vision, so it's not harsh light.
I've heard other experiences describe it the same way, Sheldan, that they said, one gentleman told me that it was almost like walking in a lightweight mud, or a deep carpet pile. He said it was just very, very soft and very pleasant. When you were having your experiences, how did they take you? How were you? How did you go with them? Did you have some signals or signs or hear some noises that kind of gave you the cue? Oh, they're here, and here I go.
Well, they would always tell me before I did anything, because the way they preferred to do it was to just have me lie down on the bed. So I would hear this very strong voice in my head would say, "Go lie down." So I knew, here we go.
Okay. So you never experienced anything unpleasant as far as how they were taken. For example, Jim Sparks, who wrote a wonderful book called The Keepers, he said there's the easy way and the hard way. And in the beginning, I guess it was a little more difficult for him because he was taken as a full mature adult and not as a child, so it wasn't an experience that he had any ease with. And here again, we're not sure who's taking who, different groups, of course, but different experiences. And I think that's why it's hard for some people to get rid of the fear because of everything that's been portrayed. But I'm so glad that you've had some wonderful experiences. Now, these were the Syrians. Did they tell you that your life's work was with them and what's going on with you now with them?
Right, they did. They also told me about the Galactic Federation, and I got to meet all kinds of people from different planets or star systems that are part of the Galactic Federation.
Yes, I want to talk about the Galactic Federation because I, too, have interaction with them as well. Let's just, for folks that think we've been watching too many Star Trek reruns, kind of give them a rundown about what the Galactic Federation is about and how long it's been in existence.
Well, the Galactic Federation is basically about bringing light to the galaxy. And so they are a confederation or a federation of over 200,000 different star nations and groups of star nations that sometimes they have confederacies that come together. And they just kind of have come together for one purpose, which, as I said, is to spread the light. There's 24 main councils or 24 sectors in this galaxy. And so I've met people from different areas of these 24 councils all over the place, and they are incredible beings also. So though some of them to me were still a little scary because you still have that background memory from this planet and from other lifetimes of certain beings not being very nice. And so when you see them, the whole process initially, I'd say the first 5, 10, or 15 or whatever seconds is you feel that initial fear, but then they immediately come in and take that away from you. And you say, wow. And, of course, when I was a kid, I was a lot smaller than I am now, so they were even bigger.
It's all relative, isn't it?
It's all relative.
I also think it would be helpful if, in your words, you could explain, because I think, like everybody else, we think, okay, here we are on this planet, we have this galaxy that we know of and others that we don't know of yet, and we're trying to wrap our brains around what would a galactic federation look like. For example, are they up there just floating around on a big mothership, or is it in a dimensional space? Because this is only a linear space-time. How would you describe that?
Well, what they do, they have a multi-dimensional meeting place on Vega,
right?
And that place is enormous. The closest I've ever seen anybody do try to do a movie special effects version of it probably would be the second stories, the second trilogy of Star Wars.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because you see the same thing. They have these places there where these groups are just go on forever in this semicircle, and they all are floating around, and you kind of got a little bit of that concept. I think maybe George Lucas had some kind of experiences or memories put in him where he could create the process on film because he had the money and the special effects to give you a general idea, even though the storyline is not usually what goes on there as far as what the actual minutes of the meeting would entail, but the process of how it looks and how things interact and the different types of beings, amazing different types of beings that are involved with it, is just perfect. And so if I were to give a basic, say, well, what does it look like? I would say if you saw the council in Star Wars, then you would get a general idea of what I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, the other thing is, too, Sheldan, I think you hit on something very poignant because I also believe, for example, that Steven Spielberg or someone close to him is an experiencer as well, because I think he had it right when he did Close Encounters and E.T., and then, of course, he pulled a 180 when he did the remake of War of the Worlds, and I was not